Welcome to Shadow Keepers, where history hides in the dark and the past never truly rests. I'm Lee.
And I'm B. Tonight we begin our descent into one of the most haunted places in all of England, a fortress soaked in blood, betrayal, and centuries of unrest.
The Tower of London, a symbol of royal power and a prison of tortured souls. Some say the stones themselves remember.
In part one of The Haunting of the Tower of London, we uncover the echoes of those who were imprisoned, executed, and never left. From Anne Boleyn's headless apparition to the chilling cries of the princes in the tower.
Turn down the lights, lock the doors, and listen closely. The shadows are watching. London Tower. Most people think of the tower as a tourist spot, a landmark, a snapshot of British history in stone and steel. But what they don't understand is that this place isn't just old. It's alive. It breathes through its walls. It drinks sorrow. It remembers everything. Built by William the Conqueror in the 1070s, the tower started as a fortress, but it evolved into something else, something darker. Over the centuries, it became a royal residence, an execution site, a prison, an armory, a treasury, a zoo, and a cemetery. A single structure that wore every mask and kept every secret. And the blood? It's still there, soaked into the stones, echoing in the silence between footsteps. They say over 400 years of executions happened within these walls, from queens to traitors to children. Some public, most not. The tower didn't just punish bodies, it broke spirits, slowly, quietly. And the deeper you go, the colder it gets. There are no happy ghosts in the tower. Every spirit here were undone, betrayed, forgotten, left behind by time, and remembered only by the tower itself. And the tower? It doesn't forget. The White Tower, the oldest and most haunted, where people report crushing pressure, whispering in the walls, cold hands brushing their neck. Even the ravens, those legendary birds tied to Britain's fate, are said to be guardians, not mascots. As long as they remain, the kingdom stands. But what if they ever leave? Something is waiting underneath. And then there's Traitor's Gate, the infamous entrance by water, where prisoners saw the tower rising like a tomb as they arrived. What if the tower wasn't just a place where terrible things happened? What if it was built to hold them in? A prison, not for people, but for energy, for secrets, for ancient wrongs so potent they needed walls, blood, and silence to contain them. Every ghost in the tower isn't just wandering, they're bound, not just to their death, but to something older, something deeper. What if the tower isn't haunted? What if the tower is haunting? A living relic, a spiritual sinkhole, a cursed monument to the idea that power must be fed with blood and memory. And maybe that's why the ghosts won't rest, because the tower won't let them. Because we're not supposed to forget what was done there. And some shadows aren't meant to fade. Let me tell you about a king who never really wanted to be one. Henry VI, born in 1421, was literally a baby when he became King of England. His dad, the famous warrior, King Henry V, dies, and boom, little Henry is handed a crown before he can even walk. Some say he was only 9 months old. Can you imagine inheriting two entire kingdoms? England before your first birthday, then France 2 years later? Now, you think growing up with that kind of power would make him this bold, commanding ruler, right? Nope. Henry VI was gentle, thoughtful. Some say too soft for the brutal world he was born into. While other kings were charging into battle, Henry was more interested in books, prayer, and helping the poor. He was deeply religious, quiet, and honestly kind of a misfit on the throne. But here where it gets really tragic. He wasn't just soft-hearted. Henry also struggled mentally, big time. There were moments when he just shut down completely. He once went over a year without speaking or recognizing anyone, not even his own wife or newborn son. It was like his mind just stepped out and left his body behind. Some even say He may have been schizophrenic. And during all of this, England was tearing itself apart. The Wars of the Roses were brewing. Two royal families, the Lancasters and the Yorks, clawing for the crown. Henry, poor guy, was smack in the middle, wearing the crown but powerless to hold it. His reign was a mess, rebellions, betrayals, complete political chaos. He was deposed not once but twice. Picture this: one day you're king, the next you're a prisoner, and then back to a king, only to be locked up again. It was like a royal roller coaster from hell. And through it all, Henry just didn't seem built for the game. He wasn't cruel or calculating or war hungry like the elder kings. He was a lamb in a world of wolves, and in the end, it cost him everything. So, what happens to a lamb surrounded by wolves? Well, eventually they tear him apart. After years of political back and forth, Henry's enemies, the Yorks, finally had enough. Edward IV, Henry's own cousin, leader of the Yorkist faction, took the throne for good. And Henry? He was dragged back to the Tower of London. Now, the Tower, it's no fairy tale castle. It's cold, it's damp, and it's where kings go to disappear. By this point, Henry had lost everything: his crown, his kingdom, his son, even his mind. And then, on the night of May 21st, 1471, just a few weeks after his only son was killed in battle, Henry VI was found dead in his cell. Official word: he died of grief, melancholy, they called it. But come on, no one really buys that, not even the historians. There are reports of blood found in his cell, blood pouring from his head. That doesn't scream natural causes, does it? Most believe he was murdered, a quiet, efficient execution ordered by Edward IV himself. No trial, no ceremony, just a whispered command and a blade in the dark. But death didn't end Henry's story. If anything, it gave him new power, because that's when the ghost stories began. Guards started whispering about strange sightings in Wakefield Tower, where Henry was likely killed. They'd hear footsteps when no one was there, low, mournful praying echoing through stone corridors. Some even claimed to see him, robes flowing, eyes empty, pacing slowly like he's still trapped in that final night, still waiting for justice. And here's the creepiest part. Every year, on the anniversary of his death, people say his ghost returns, not with rage, not to haunt, but with sorrow, as if he's still reliving the moment he was betrayed, silenced, and forgotten. So here's a question no one ever really asks: why is Henry still haunting the tower? I mean, think about it. Ghosts linger for a reason: unfinished business, a buried truth, a secret no one was meant to find. And Henry, he wasn't just any king. He was a man swallowed by history, silenced by power. And maybe, just maybe, he left something behind. Some say the tower guards more than prisoners. It guards secrets, pages torn from the past, names scrubbed from the record, and in Henry's case, possibly a hidden confession, a last message, or a royal document that could rewrite the line of succession. What if Henry knew he was going to be killed? What if he left a warning? There's a persistent rumor, buried in old letters and scribbled in the margins of medieval chronicles, that Henry VI entrusted a document to a tower priest that night before he died. Something so dangerous, so damning, it had to be hidden. The priest vanished weeks later, and whatever Henry gave him was never seen again. Could it still be hidden somewhere in the tower's forgotten chambers? Could that be why his ghost returns, not to haunt, but to guide, to show someone the path to what was lost? I don't just believe in hauntings, I believe in messages, echoes from the past that are trying to be heard. So if you ever find yourself standing inside the Tower of London on May 21st, listen, really listen. You might hear footsteps that shouldn't be there, a whisper in the cold stone halls, or maybe, just maybe, the quiet, broken voice of a king who died with a secret and has waited centuries for someone to finally uncover the truth.
That was so sad.
Yeah, he had a sad life and
When you
history.
s when you said Lancaster, it was like Lancaster against, whatever other city it
Yorks.
was. I thought Lannister,
Yeah,
like this was Game
yeah.
of Thrones.
I was like, wait a minute.
I'm like, "Wait, is this where he got the idea from?"
No, Lancasters
Yeah.
and Yorks.
And I was thinking too, like, how different the world would be today if, how they were like, he was a lamb trying to rule in a world of wolves, and I was like, I wonder how different the world would be today if we were a country ruled by lambs instead of wolves.
Yeah.
Like, I picture us being more peaceful, more understanding, more loving, more kind,
But that means that
and more patient.
everybody would have to rule like that, like lambs,
Yes,
you know what I
yeah,
mean? Because then you will have that one person that says, "Oh, everybody's so accommodating, I'm gonna take everything from everyone."
that's true. But I even said it, like, I think we had this conversation, like, months ago. It's like, if people just were satisfied with what they have and just make
Mhm.
what you have great, that'd be amazing. Just worry about what you have.
But the
Like,
crazy thing to me is they crowned a 9-month-old baby. Like, he was a baby. He had no idea, just growing up, what he
honestly,
even
though,
wanted to be or what to do in life.
well, he wouldn't have had a choice either way.
Yeah, he
It
wouldn't have
wouldn't
a
have
choice,
mattered
but
it wouldn't have mattered if his father died and he was 20 years old. He
Mhm.
still would have had to take over. It doesn't matter if he wanted to be an artist or travel with the
And that
circus or
that
whatever.
really sucks. Like, imagine, like, if I was king and I have one kid and I see he's very sensitive and artistic, I would have another kid, maybe he's more brutal, he's more, he has more of the traits of being a king,
Well
and I would let the one that's, like, sweet just be. Like,
well, technically, they're supposed to have more children. They're supposed to
yeah.
have, like, that's like Prince Harry. He wrote a book, and I think it's labeled, like, the title is Spare, because he's the spare child just in case something happened to William. So, from my understanding, like, you're supposed to try, 1, for more children, but mainly more sons, just in
Well
case something happens to the first one or he's
well,
not.
maybe he didn't have a chance because King Henry V dies, but Henry was
Yeah,
still a baby, so maybe he
yeah.
didn't even get a chance to have a second child yet, and he was killed.
And not even, like, when we get to mine, it doesn't even matter if you had children or anything,
Yeah.
but,
But
um
the King Henry VI, like, is said, like, he was always helping the villagers, he was, helping people. I think he may have even created, like, schools or maybe, like, 2 colleges or something, because he was, like, that kind of person, you know what I mean? He
yeah,
was just all about education and prayer and stuff like that. He wasn't
it makes
about.
me wanting to conquer the world.
Mhm. I wonder if that's why Henry also struggled mentally, like, maybe
He
all that was just too much for him and he
he was, like,
couldn't.
split again it
Yeah,
felt maybe, like, split against what he wanted to do, like, what he felt was right, but what his people and advisors were telling him to do.
yeah. He had one advisor that was a peaceful advisor, and he took a lot of his advice. And because he took a lot of that peaceful advice, a lot of people would get upset because they felt like he wasn't ruling the way he should be ruling, you know what I mean? Conquering other areas and
That's
stuff
not
like that. They
ruling.
didn't like that. They didn't like that he
You know
was
what's
too
ruling?
peaceful.
Maintaining the land you have.
Yeah,
Making sure you have crops to feed your
that's what he
people
was
are
doing.
happy and healthy and
Yeah.
thriving. Not,
Mhm.
"Let's go conquer, so now we gotta go to war. Now we gotta take
Yeah.
all our crops, and we have to send it to the soldiers that they're strong enough, but now the people in our villages don't have any food." See, that's not ruling.
Mhm.
Get
Yeah.
on my
I think
nerve.
he was ruling how you were supposed to, like,
Yeah.
helping his community, helping his people, you know what I mean? He was doing that, but
It's
they didn't like it.
it's honestly shocking that he wasn't more corrupt considering he didn't have a king by his side to show him the way, so I would have thought that they would have tried to corrupt him in a way to make him make rule the way they would want him to,
Mhm.
considering he became king at such a young age,
Yeah. And then his own cousin, man,
which was
uh, Edward IV. He was with the Yorks, so that was
well
Henry's enemies from the start, and he had enough, and he just took over everything and said, "Get
well,
out of here."
he didn't have it much better because that leads me right into mine.
Oh, okay.
Edward V and Richard, Duke of York, remains one of England's most enduring mysteries. Their disappearance and presumed murder in 1483 continues to cast a dark shadow over the Tower of London, where their ghosts are said to linger. After the death of King Edward IV, In April 1483, his 12-year-old son, Edward V, was the rightful heir to the throne. However, due to his young age, his uncle Richard, Duke of Gloucester, was named Lord Protector. Edward and his younger brother Richard of Shrewsbury, who was just 9 years old, were placed in the Tower of London. Then, not just a prison, but also a royal residence, apparently to prepare for Edward's coronation. But the coronation never came. Instead, Richard declared that the boys were illegitimate based on claims that their father's marriage to their mother, Elizabeth Woodville, had been invalid. Richard seized the throne for himself, becoming King Richard III in July 1483. Shortly after, the princes vanished. No one saw them again. Rumors spread that they had been murdered, perhaps by Richard III himself, or by Henry Tudor, later Henry VII, who defended Richard at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485. Many believe the boys were smothered with pillows in their sleep, their bodies hidden somewhere in the tower. In 1674, over 190 years later, workmen renovating the White Tower discovered two small skeletons buried beneath a staircase. They were assumed to be the remains of the lost princes, though modern forensic testing has never been conducted on them. The bones were placed in Westminster Abbey, but the mystery of their fate remains unsolved. Are the princes trapped in the tower? The tragic fate of Edward and Richard remain one of the darkest mysteries in British history. Whether their spirits still roam the tower or their story simply refuses to fade, one thing is certain: the legend of the princes in the tower endure, haunting both history and the walls of one of England's most infamous landmarks. Yes, there are multiple eyewitness accounts and historical reports of ghostly encounters believed to be linked to the princes in the tower. Edward V and his younger brother Richard, one of the earliest recorded accounts of the ghosts of the princes, came from the 17th century around the time their supposed remains were discovered in 1674. Guards on night patrol claimed to have seen two ghostly figures in white nightgowns wandering hand in hand near the Bloody Tower. The boys appeared to be frightened and whispering to each other before slowly fading into the darkness. These sightings became so frequent that some guards refused to patrol the area at night. In the 19th century, a yeoman warder, beef eater, reported seeing the two spectral children standing in a passageway, clutching each other in fear. He described them as semi-transparent, pale, wearing period-accurate nightgowns. As he watched, the figures slowly dissolved into stone walls behind them. The Tower of London's warders have long passed down stories of these mysterious sightings. In 1915, during World War I, a British soldier stationed at the tower claimed to have seen two small figures darting through the walls of the Bloody Tower. He initially thought they were intruders, but when he approached, they vanished before his eyes. Other guards in the same time period reported strange noises, soft sobbing, whispers, and footsteps when no one was there. Multiple reports over the years describe mysterious lights appearing near the Bloody Tower. A recurring story claims that during late night patrols, strange flickering lights have been seen moving along the stairs, where the boys were allegedly murdered. Some visitors have reported seeing shadowy, childlike figures in the same area. In the 1990s, a paranormal research team was given permission to conduct an overnight study in the tower. Their equipment picked up unexplainable temperature drops and faint whispers in the area where the princes were last seen. A few investigators even reported a sudden, overwhelming sense of sadness, as if experiencing an echo of the boys' final moments. Are the princes' spirits trapped in the tower? With centuries of reports describing the same eerie apparitions, whispers, and mysterious lights, it's no wonder the tale of the princes in the tower continue to haunt history. Are these ghostly children the restless spirits of Edward V and Richard of Shrewsbury? eternity seeking justice? Or is their tragic tale so powerful that it has left an imprint on time itself? The Tower of London holds its secrets well, but for those who have witnessed the princess's ghost, the past is never truly gone.
Yeah, that's really sad. But
I was
yeah.
having such a hard time. No, it was so sad. And what was really sad is so his dad died. Their dad died. Edward the Fourth. Obviously, he wasn't a good king because of what he did to Henry the Sixth, but he entrusted his brother with his sons.
Yeah.
And I don't get like how you just said, now Henry the Sixth became king at 9 months.
He was 9 years old?
12.
12.
Yeah. Prince Edward the Fifth was 12. By their logic, he was way old enough to be king.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
his uncle, his father's brother was
Mhm.
like, "Hey, I'll step in and I'll protect this role for you until you're of age." And not even of age, he was going to have a coronation. Technically, they were going to make him king at 12,
Mhm.
but they hid him until the coronation to keep him safe. But the person he wasn't safe from was his own uncle because he wanted the throne.
Mhm.
So it's like the person that, you entrust your children to, and they're
Yeah,
the ones who cause the most damage.
that's true. There's a lot of jealousy and everybody wants a throne. Like,
Yeah.
why do you want that responsibility?
And my thing is, why not have put him there, you know? He was 12. You could have probably steered him in whatever way you wanted him to be
Exactly.
and manipulated and coerced him to do whatever you wanted.
He'd see you as a father figure and he would trust you and do your bidding
I
for
made
you,
you, yeah,
basically,
lead advisor. Like
unless he
you,
didn't trust that he was gonna do that.
and then he killed both boys because if Edward died, then Richard would then be the heir to
Mhm.
the throne. So they both needed to be gone.
Yeah, that's messed up.
Which is which is crazy because King Edward actually had a lot of children,
Mhm.
not just these 2, and children that were older. But again, it was more about legitimacy.
Yeah.
But I don't like who did you find, and it's also too like kings and well, mainly kings. I was gonna say kings and queens. I don't know what I was trying to say. Kings that would go to whatever church that the country is following at the time and say, "Hey, I want you to sign this saying that their marriage wasn't legit. So these are bastard children, so they can't rule." Like,
Mhm.
that's crazy to me. If it was a legal marriage for over 12 years and you just come out of nowhere, it's not a real marriage, so therefore these children are illegitimate, that's crazy to me. Especially since back then kings would take their children from their mistresses and get them legalized
Yeah, but
and
that's
claim
like
them.
when you
They only
have a
had daughters.
bastard kid somewhere out there, I'm gonna go find him, so
Mhm.
he's better than nothing.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
You took these 2 boys, put them in a tower to hide them away.
Mhm.
They don't even know when they died, how they died, or who killed them. Like, they don't know what year because they just straight disappeared. They are saying that the place that they died, the thing is they don't know where their bodies were found is where they died. It could be
Yeah.
just where they buried them,
Mhm.
and they were saying that, "Oh, it looked like they might have been smothered with a pillow." You don't know.
You don't know. Yeah, if it's just bones, there's no way you could find out.
No, it was just bones. Like, again, they found their bones almost 200 years later.
But if there's no damage to the bones, that's probably why they said smothered. If there's
That is
nothing broken or, you know what I mean?
that's true. That
Nothing
is true.
pierced the skull or anything, so but that's and their ghosts are probably roaming around because they probably don't even know they're dead.
It's
If it
just
happened
sad.
really quick, like during sleep, they probably don't even know.
It's just sad because then it's like even when they do see their ghosts, they're traveling together.
Yeah.
But I don't
Well,
know.
at least they're not alone, so
I couldn't have lived back then.
no,
I
it's
think
it
I would
was
have been killed. I think I would have been I would have been killed. I would have probably been deemed a witch.
probably, yeah.
Yeah,
So
because I'm too much of an asshole.
yeah. I'm sure. I mean, I would like to just have a little farm, raise a little couple of sheep, just live a good life. But no,
No,
they didn't allow anybody to just live the good life.
that's
Like,
what I'm
they
saying.
always took
Listen,
everything away from everybody.
give me a little piece of a little piece of land.
Yeah, give me a little
Let me have
farmhouse.
my sheep, my cows,
Yeah, exactly. Couple
make
of
my
chickens,
sheep milk or whatever, my cows, all of
your
it,
goat
cheese,
milk, your
goat milk,
goat
there you go.
cheese.
Yes, some eggs,
No, because you would have too much. That's being prosperous. They will take that shit away from you. Like, whoa, whoa, she got a
I
lot
would
of
have had
food
to
there.
take a boat to the Americas.
Well, she got a lot of eggs there. We need to take some of that. You got to be
I'm
paying
like
taxes.
that's
You'll be
like,
paying
how is it
taxes.
how Switzerland and Den how they all stay out of the woodwork? They stayed, like, "Imma have to go over there. It's cold, that's why." Everybody's like, "I ain't going over there, it's too
That's
cold."
true. Yeah, that's true.
Crazy.
So let's go back to 1536. Anne Boleyn had once been everything to Henry VIII. His obsession, his rebellion against the Pope, his queen. He tore apart an entire religion to marry her. But obsession turns to resentment fast, especially in royal courts. She gave him a daughter, Elizabeth, the future queen, but not the male heir he desperately wanted. And he was done waiting. In the blink of an eye, Anne went from queen to traitor. Anne wasn't the type to go quietly. She was intelligent, political, sharp tongued. She knew too much. So Henry's chief minister, Thomas Cromwell, did what monsters do best. He turned the court into a stage and Anne into a villain. The charges against her were wild and crafted like a weapon, cold, precise, designed to destroy her completely, body, legacy, and soul, not just to execute her, but to make the world believe she deserved it. And what were the charges? Adultery, incest, treason. Sounds like the script of a scandal, right? That was the point. Cromwell orchestrated a smear campaign, one that would point Anne not just as unfaithful, but as unnatural, evil, a queen turned temptress, turned witch, turned traitor. He claimed Anne had committed adultery with 5 men, one of them her own brother, George Boleyn. Yes, incest. Mark Smeaton, a court musician, low-born, he was tortured, likely cracked, and confessed. His confession was used as the cornerstone of the entire case. Sir Henry Norris, Henry VIII's own close friend and groom of the stool. Yes, literally the man who helped the king with his bathroom needs. Sir Francis Weston, William Brereton, George Boleyn, Anne's brother, charged with incest and plotting the king's death. These are the men that he claimed that she committed adultery with. There was no real evidence, no witnesses, just a few suspicious dates, one of which accused Anne of sleeping with a man when she was recovering from childbirth. Physically impossible. But facts didn't matter. The trial was political theater, a puppet court. And when Anne stood before it, she didn't weep. She defended herself brilliantly, boldly, but it didn't matter. The verdict was already written, and they wanted to watch her break. Why were these charges so extreme? Because Henry didn't just want Anne dead, he wanted her destroyed. Adultery made her a traitor under English law, punishable by death. Incest, that made her a monster. It turned public opinion. It erased sympathy. Even if someone had once admired Anne, now they'd see her as corrupt, dangerous. Her bloodline, her daughter Elizabeth, tainted. She may have been silenced not only for who she was, but for what she knew. There are whispers that Anne had kept letters, secret correspondences between nobles and foreign agents. There were rumors of prophecies, too, that Anne believed Elizabeth would one day rule England, that she'd seen it in a dream. What if those dreams weren't dreams? What if Anne had some kind of foresight or knowledge of a deeper game being played? Maybe Cromwell and the others weren't just afraid of her tongue. Maybe they were afraid of what she knew. What if her trial was to silence a seer queen whose blood was too dangerous to let continue? 5 men were executed alongside her, including her own brother. Anne was in the way, and Henry wanted a clean slate. So they cleaned it with a sword. Her execution was chilling in its precision. A French swordsman was brought in, specially chosen for his skill, as if a faster death was a gift. Anne wore gray, not royal robes, but the plain dress of a condemned woman. She said she was innocent. She prayed for Henry. She forgave. She laughed nervously, and then she knelt, laid her head on the block, and the sword did its work. Anne died quietly, with dignity. But Anne's story didn't end on that scaffold. Oh no, her spirit refused to stay buried. Anne's ghost has been spotted all over England, not just in the Tower, but in Havercastle, her childhood home, Blickling Hall, where she was born, even Windsor and Hampton Court. But the Tower of London is where her presence is strongest, the darkest. They say she appears near the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, where her body lies beneath the floor. And get this, more than one guard has claimed to see her headless form drifting through the corridors, not once, but often. Some say she carries her severed head, others say she just glides silently, her face unreadable, still wearing the same dress she wore on the scaffold. It always happens on the anniversary of her death, May 19th. But it gets stranger. Anne doesn't just haunt, she replays. There are chilling reports of an eerie silence falling over the tower right around the time of her execution, as if time rewinds itself. Guards report sudden chills, hearing footsteps in the scaffold, even faint weeping when no one else is around. And some believe she's not alone. There's a room in the tower, now sealed, where a yeoman warder was claimed to see Anne's ghost, praying, not pacing, not weeping, kneeling, hands clasped, lips moving in silent prayer. He swore she turned to look at him. And in that moment, the air dropped to freezing. His torch went out, and she was gone. And then there's the ravens, the tower ravens, those legendary birds tied to Britain's fate are said to grow agitated around the date of Anne's death. Some refuse to leave their roost. Some call loudly through the night. One even disappeared mysteriously one year, only to return the next morning, drenched, as if it had flown through the storm no one else could see. What if Anne's ghost isn't just a result of a tragic death? What if something else happened that day, something the history books won't tell you? There are whisperers, old buried accounts of Anne's practicing ritual prayer in her final days, not just Catholic rites, something older, something not meant for the altar, but for protection. A woman betrayed by the most powerful man in the world might not just go quietly. Maybe Anne cursed the tower. Maybe she left part of herself behind on purpose. A watchful eye, a warning, a message only the right person will understand. And maybe she's still waiting for that person to arrive. But here's the kicker. While King Henry VIII was initially disappointed that he didn't have a boy, he still placed high hopes on his daughter Elizabeth. After Anne was executed in 1536, when Elizabeth was just 2.5 years old, she was declared illegitimate. She lost her place in the line of succession and grew up under a cloud of political danger and court suspicion. And yet she rose. When Elizabeth eventually took the throne in 1558, she reigned for 44 years and became known as the Virgin Queen, presiding over a golden age of exploration, art, and power. In a way, her reign was the ultimate revenge for her mother's brutal end. So, yes, Anne Boleyn, the ghost said to walk the tower with sorrow in her eyes, gave birth to a queen who would define an entire era. There's something powerful about that, right? A beheaded traitor's daughter rising to become one of the most iconic rulers in history.
I love Anne. I love her so much.
Yeah, but I don't understand if he loved her so much, just because she gave birth to a girl, it changed just like that in
So
a snap of a finger?
his first wife, I think, also only gave birth to daughters, and I think she had a lot of miscarriages. He was tired of that, so back then, England under his rule was Catholic.
Mhm.
They don't allow divorce unless you can prove adultery and stuff like that. He couldn't prove
Yeah.
anything, so he broke away from the Catholic Church, and that's when they became, I think it was Protestant. Because under Protestant, you are allowed to divorce, many times. So he broke from the Catholic Church, became Protestant, and married Anne, and then just took his old wife and put her in a farmhouse in the countryside with her children.
Damn.
So, like, he had children. They were just girls.
Yeah, I
And
guess her having another girl, like, just set him off, like, enough
yeah,
is enough.
but what men don't realize is they are the ones
That
that
determined the sex.
determine the sex.
Yeah, but of course, they would never know that.
No. If they couldn't have children, it wouldn't be the men's fault, it'd be the women's. But his 3rd wife did, I believe, produce a son, but I think he either died or there might have been something wrong with him.
That could have just been a punishment to him. Sometimes I feel like,
Karma.
yeah.
After all that, after all was said and done, it was Anne Boleyn's daughter, Elizabeth, Elizabeth
Mhm.
the First, who became queen and one of the longest reigning royals of history.
44
Technically
years, yeah.
technically, Queen Elizabeth II is the longest reigning royal to be on the throne, but she was also, a woman, and she chose never to marry,
Mhm.
I think because of what happened to her mom.
Yeah.
'Cause she knew if she'd marry, it would no longer be her in charge, it'd be her husband, and she wasn't having that. And I think, especially how women were treated back then, like her own mother, all these lies, all because you were an unsatisfied king. You don't get out my face. He shoulda haunted Henry into insanity.
Mhm.
I wanna be haunting the tower. I'll be haunting his castle until he jumped out a freaking window out of insanity. Drives me crazy. You switched a whole country's religion for this woman.
Mhm. Yep. That's what I'm saying. The love he
Like,
had for her
I
was so intense.
I get okay, maybe alright, the first one's a girl. Alright, we keep trying. Maybe the second
Exactly.
one is
At
a
least
girl.
have 3 or
That's
4.
what
I mean,
I'm saying.
you're a king.
The second and the third one wasn't gonna be a point.
Exactly.
You did all that for what? You're an irrational man and irking the shit out of me. You irk my soul to the deepest
For
depths
what?
of my
A
gut.
woman ruled anyway. For
Yeah,
what?
for all
It
that,
didn't matter. You could
for
have
all
just
that.
accepted
You
Elizabeth
still
as the heir
you
and
still produced
treated
an
them
heir.
lovingly. Yeah. And what if he would have just, like, accepted his daughter? So what? What would have happened? She still ruled either way. It didn't matter.
And yeah, I'm gonna say it, and I'll probably get a lot of hate, and I don't care. I think women are probably better rulers anyway.
I was thinking that actually.
Okay? So what? We get a period. And so what? We get an attitude. You know what? Maybe that's when we need a bitch. I don't get how y'all are allowed to be over here grabbing body parts of the opposite sex and saying the most outlandish shit out your mouth, but you're a boss.
Mhm.
Let me start grabbing body parts and just saying random shit out my
Can
mouth.
you
Okay?
imagine if a
But I'll
female
be
president was grabbing body parts? Like, what would they be saying
like,
about her?
she is a predator and should not be in the White House.
That's crazy.
But y'all don't get out my face with that. Like, and my thing is, me having a period doesn't make me irrational. It just makes me less willing to deal with your bullshit. What it makes
Exactly.
me is less patient. But if, as a man, you think y'all don't have a monthly cycle, just because y'all don't bleed out your body parts, doesn't mean you don't have a menstrual cycle. It is scientifically proven that every month men do have a menstrual cycle. They have too much testosterone in their body and they have an attitude problem. As
And that's why we have attitude problem because our testosterone levels go up. So
so
we get agitated, just like they do.
as someone who lives with a bunch of men, you don't
Mhm.
think I notice?
Yeah,
Like,
you're surrounded by dicks
ugh, 5. I was
all
like,
around you,
"Damn."
dude.
It's like, "Damn, we couldn't get another vagina in the house?" Like, my
Yeah.
god.
Yeah, so it's not the estrogen that makes us
It's the testosterone.
agitated, yeah, and emotional, it's the testosterone, and y'all have it. That's all you have. Like,
And that's why, though, men become softer in their older age because their estrogen levels go up,
mhm.
because
Yep,
their
they lose
testosterone
as yeah,
drops.
they lose it. Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, "Oh, I didn't act like that." Or you see a guy being a little too all up in his woman, say, "Oh my god, you shouldn't do that." I bet you was doing that 20 years ago. What you talking about?
Mhm.
Acting like you was above it all. Get out of here. Like, what's his name? King Henry the Sixth was balanced.
Yeah, he was.
He didn't even have time to have babies.
Nope, and they did not like the balance.
Get on my nerves. That makes me so angry. That makes me so angry because I love Anne Boleyn. Yeah, she was sneaky. She was sneaky. She played dirty. You know, she knew Henry was already married and she seduced him and she promised to give him a son if he married
See?
her.
That's it's right there. You shouldn't be promising something you don't know that you can produce.
I think women
She
didn't
brought it on
realize
to
something.
herself.
That's true. That
Got him all
oh
hyped up and
yeah.
everything.
Wait.
Oh,
She said,
excited.
no, 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 no. I would be like, I promised you a son. I ain't say the first one was gonna be a son.
Exactly. I said, "A son."
Then they be like, that's why women be sneaky. Y'all be trying to switch it up.
That, she kinda brought it onto herself. Maybe not that brutal, but she shouldn't have promised that.
Dude,
She shouldn't have done
listen,
that.
y'all did too much. You put the other ex-wife in a farmhouse in the middle of the country somewhere.
See, but that's might be okay. It probably worked out better
No,
for her.
for
That
real.
probably worked
I
out
think
better for
so. I
her.
don't wanna be no queen. Get out of here.
Yeah, it's like, "Listen, Annie, you want this so bad? Go ahead, go get beheaded because I'm gonna go to my little farmhouse, raise my chickens and my sheep, with my kids,
Well,
and
not
not
even
worry
because
about this
technically
shit."
she was still part of a royal family, so she still had servants.
It's even better, even better.
She
She
just
had the
got
life.
to
She had the
yeah,
perfect life during
watch
that
her
time.
children
Mhm. Live
thrive
her
on a
best life.
farm.
She was
Yeah,
living her best life.
in their country estate. I
And
mean, like,
guess what didn't happen to her? She didn't get beheaded.
let me find out what happened to his first wife before we over here talking shit.
Or right? She probably beheaded and shit.
King Henry, Catherine of Aragon, daughter of King Trinidad and Queen Isabella of Spain. That's probably why he couldn't kill her. She was too big time. Anne Boleyn wasn't shit.
Yeah, that's true. Spain would have
They had
fucked
an
him up. They
annulment
killed him.
because she had only given birth to Mary, who, from my understanding, also became queen.
Wait, so she only had one child with him?
Yeah, she only, it says
So
here,
she only produced one child and he just had enough, like, and just been with somebody else? Like, you didn't even try to have more kids? I thought he had like 3 or 4 kids with her and they were all girls and he's like, "Fuck that shit. I'm gonna be with somebody else." And then here comes, Anne saying, "I promise you a boy," and then hype him up. But he only had 1 kid. It doesn't even make sense for you to take on another lover for just 1 kid.
yeah, Catherine, it doesn't say how she died. She died at 50, which that's old.
Yeah,
Back
back then.
then,
Mhm.
back then, that's old.
That's
But
like
yeah,
that's like 80, 90 now.
what's crazy is his other daughter also was queen,
Mhm.
Queen Mary. So you had 2 daughters that both became queen. You was asking for too much.
That's what I'm saying. That's his punishment.
It was. He was never meant. Hold on, let me see. Let me see his third wife. Honest to God, all this had me going down such a
A rabbit
rabbit
hole.
hole of shit that did then I was like, "Oh, hold on." Because even my next one, she's connected to, like, the first one, like, the family, and I was like, "Well, wait a minute, because this is years later." Then I was like, "Wait, so when did we switch over from, like, kings and queens? Like, how are y'all related to the current people? Like, is Queen Elizabeth the First related to the Queen Elizabeth of the Second? And did you know that Prince William, hi
Mhm.
Kate Middleton, all that shit that they didn't want them to marry because she's a commoner, bitch got royal blood, like, legit royal blood.
Yeah.
I think she's, like, related to the Tudors or shit, and I'm like, "Bru
Oh, shit.
like, she ain't like nobody."
Mhm.
I was like, "Wow, y'all are just tripping over here." Alright, last wife. Oh, shit, he had 6 wives?
And they all gave him daughters?
King Henry VIII had 3 legitimate children who survived infancy and went to rule England. Edward VI, Mary I, and Elizabeth I. Henry's only son by his third wife only reigned from 1547 to 1553. Then Mary ruled from 1553 to 1558. Then Elizabeth ruled from 1558 to
Well,
16.
yeah, because Mary's older than Elizabeth.
Yeah,
So,
she's from his
mhm.
first wife.
Mhm.
And Edward, though he's the youngest, ruled because he's a boy.
'Cause yeah.
And then Henry also had an acknowledged illegitimate son, Henry Fitzroy, who died young. So he did have another boy who died. After all that,
Mhm.
who ruled the country for you? Your daughter.
Exactly.
And she was an amazing ruler.
Mhm.
I can't. He irks me. All these men irk me. All of you. I said that, and two dogs looked at me. So my next story. Margaret Pole, the last Plantagenet, and the Butchered Countess. Margaret Pole, Countess of Salisbury, 1473-1541, was one of the last surviving members of the Plantagenet dynasty, a noble family that once ruled England. She was a direct descendant of Edward III, making her royal blood a dangerous threat under the Tudor reign. But Margaret's legacy is not just one of noble lineage. It is one of betrayal, imprisonment, and one of the most gruesome executions in England history. Margaret was born into a royal family during a time of chaos. She was the daughter of George, Duke of Clarence, the brother of Edward IV and Richard III, but her father was executed for treason, drowned in a vat of wine, legend says. When she was just a child, this marked the beginning of a life haunted by danger. After the Tudors took the throne, Margaret was forced into political obscurity, married off to a lesser noble, Sir Richard Pole. But fate was not done with her yet. When Henry VIII came to power, Margaret found herself back in royal favor. She became governess to Princess Mary, Henry's daughter with Catherine of Aragon, and was one of the most powerful women in England. But her luck ran out when her son, Reginald Pole, opposed Henry's break from the Catholic Church. Henry, furious at Reginald's defiance, decided to wipe out the whole entire Pole family. In 1539, Margaret was arrested without trial and locked away in the Tower of London. She was 67 years old, a frail woman who had committed no crime except being born with the wrong bloodline. She spent 2 years in a cold, dark cell, awaiting an unknown fate. Then on May 27th, 1541, she was dragged to the scaffold at Tower Green. Unlike other noble prisoners, she was given no trial and no warning. But when the executioner ordered her to her knees, Margaret refused, declaring her innocence. The executioner, an inexperienced axeman, then delivered one of the most horrific executions in history. His first blow missed her neck, slashing into her shoulder and back instead.
Why that
Screaming,
give me chills?
stop, because once you said it, I got chills. Screaming, Margaret tried to run, but the executioner chased her down, hacking at her with multiple blows. It reportedly took up to 10 swings of the axe to finally kill her.
That's just straight murder. That's not even an execution.
Yeah, because it's usually one and done.
Yeah. And then to chase her and chop her up, like that's oh my God.
The crowd watched in horror, and even Henry VIII's supporters were sickened by the brutality. Margaret's body was dumped in an unmarked grave at St. Peter ad Vincula, the Tower's burial chapel, where she remains to this day. Oh, that's not fair. Give that bitch a stone.
That was just brutal. Like
That was, and you kept going too. Like, oh,
mm,
like she was gonna die either way. Like, just, oh no, that's crazy.
I can't imagine the pain in your shoulder when you're running away. It's just oh.
With a death so violent, it's no wonder her spirit never left the tower. Her ghostly screams are said to echo through the tower green, especially at dawn and dusk. A ghostly figure in Tudor clothing has been seen running near the execution site, only to vanish into thin air. Some have reported seeing a phantom axe swinging through the air, reenacting her brutal killing. If I see a phantom axe flying through the air, I am
I
turning
mean,
around
I can
and I'm leaving.
understand why she screams because all the other ones was like a nice clean cut. It was over.
Yeah.
Like hers was
First
straight
of all,
murder.
I need to know man got fired. You had one job,
He was inexperienced. He was probably
and you
nervous.
should have been practicing on something. Watermelons. Like,
Yeah, that's
did her
crazy.
head move?
That's why for Anne, he hired like the person that well-known French swordsman that, that knew what he was doing at least. At least he showed some consideration for her to hire somebody that knew what they were doing. But this one, Mark, like, poor her, for no reason.
And as they said, this was one of the worst and most gruesome deaths at the tower through all the like
Yeah,
for all the
sounds like it.
death.
Yeah,
Her story is one of royalty betrayal and a terrifying end, a chilling reminder that even the most powerful can become ghosts in the Tower of London. Few executions in the bloody history of the Tower of London were gruesome, unjust, and botched, as Margaret Poles, a noblewoman of royal blood. Witnesses, guards, and visitors have reported terrifying encounters with Margaret's ghosts. Phantom screams, a headless apparition, and an invisible force of despair that clings to the Tower Green.
I feel bad for her and for her ghost to have to relive this over and over and over again. I wonder why they don't like just have somebody like a medium or somebody come and kind of like help them move on. You know what I mean? Because
They might not
the
want.
way they died was so traumatic that it like the ghosts linger. I think because of the trauma that they endured. You don't think the ghosts want to, or you don't think the tower wants to let go of the ghosts?
Maybe both.
Maybe the ghost just needs somebody to tell their story to, and then they'll be able to move on or something. I have no clue, but I just feel bad for them to have to relive the same day over all of them, from Henry to Anne to Margaret,
The princess.
the prince. Oh, their children. Like at least somebody help the children move along.
Yeah, I can see that.
Something like I think they're all in like this living trauma and they can't get out of it for centuries.
I don't know. I don't think Margaret would be able. I feel like if it's so traumatic.
Like Margaret needs justice.
Yeah, because it even says Margaret Pole's execution was not just a death. It was an act of brutality and injustice. Some believe her spirit remains bound to the place of her suffering, unable to find peace. Margaret's ghost is restless and she's seeking justice. And I think, like, I don't know if there's any remaining, like, Elizabeth didn't have any children. So, and it ended with her, the Tudor line ended with Elizabeth. So, I can see, like, until that whole line is demolished, she ain't going nowhere. So, yeah, it's crazy.
Yes,
It's crazy.
insane.
It's crazy to think because I love world history. Like, when the baby is, like, having issues in history, he'll come to me because he's like, "Mom, I know you love this." And I remember, like, even, like, last year, he was like, "We had 3 options for a topic, and I picked this one because I thought you would like it." And I looked at it, and I'm like, "No, we're switching it." I picked a different one. Um, because I always found world history more fascinating than American history. But, yeah, I always found, like, especially, like, world history when they talk about the starts of civilizations. I don't know, I just love all that. So
You know why?
yeah, no. That somebody it's so crazy. You locked 2 kids up and killed them.
I
You
know.
you butchered a woman for no at that, for her son. For a man. She didn't even do nothing. She was helping raise your daughter, and you killed her because her son didn't agree? I would've said, "Go ahead and kill my son," but nah, I don't know. I wouldn't have gone that
No,
far.
no.
I wouldn't have gone that far, but I would've told him, shut up.
Yeah. Keep your mouth shut.
Look what you
You're
did.
gonna get me killed.
You got us all killed because then they killed
They killed him too. They killed
yeah,
him too.
it's the whole family. They wanted to wipe out the whole family.
It's it's wild how they can just wipe out a whole family like that of from existence. The whole family name.
Yeah, like, because you're king, and it kinds of, "Well, 'cause I'm king, so God gave me that right." No,
No, people gave you that
no,
right. God didn't give you that right.
no, he did not. I know we can just be killing people for no reason. It's time to open the deck and see what messages the cards hold for us. Whether it's a warning, a whisper, or a revelation from the unknown, this is your tarot card of the week. This week's card is Strength Reversed, which is inner strength, self doubt, low energy, raw emotion. Strength Reversed appears in a tarot reading. Tune in to your current levels of inner strength, confidence, and self belief. Are you overflowing with self confidence? Or are you depleted? And how can you bring these aspects back into balance? If you have recently experienced a setback, you may be vulnerable and lacking in self confidence. Know that your core strength will always be with you, and now is as good a time as any to reconnect with this power. In fact, you may hold more strength and resilience than you give yourself credit for. So be kind to yourself. Check in on your energy levels right now. You may be sluggish, particularly if you have been dedicating yourself to serving others or have been pushing hard to achieve a goal.
Does that speak to you?
It does, only because, like I was even talking to Tony about all this rain. I know the rain is necessary for spring and everything, but it's just I wanna go outside. I wanna touch grass. I wanna smell earth. And it's hard when it's constantly raining.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just need a day of sunshine. But, yeah, I could see the sluggish.
Yeah, definitely low energy, yes.
It is, I feel like
I feel it.
in spring, I usually get higher, but I think it's more towards the end of April or mid-April, and I'm like, "Ah, I wanna plant flowers, I wanna take care of the yard," but it's getting past the gray area of the
Mhm.
start of spring. But other than that, like, I do feel like setbacks, but I think everybody feels setbacks here and there, and it's just pushing through it,
Mhm.
wanting to do more. Like, we've been set back for a couple weeks now, and it's
Yeah.
just, like, pushing through.
Okay. So that ends part 1 of the haunting of the Tower of London. But the spirits we've met tonight are only the beginning.
Next week, we return to the tower's darkest corner, where the executions were swift, the secrets were buried deep, and some spirits refused to be silenced.
If you thought tonight was chilling, you haven't heard the screams behind the white tower walls.
Join us next time as we continue unraveling the ghostly legacy of one of history's most haunted landmarks.
Until then, stay vigilant, stay awake, stay aware, and remember not all shadows are harmless.
Bye.
Bye.
That was hard. Where the executions were swift. Yeah, not like Margaret's.
Mm-mm.
Did that lady dirty.